It's really cliche to say, I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about it. I'm not going to use that, but I kind of am highly energized because a year ago, I was at the BAPI conference in New York, and we had been working on our API management system and our product for 6 months, and we weren't quite ready to go to marketplace. And it was another 2 months after I spoke before we could announce what we were doing. And at that conference, I really wanted to tell people what we were doing and say, go to this website and start using it. But we just weren't ready. But a year has passed, and we actually did launch that website. And the story that I'm going to be telling you today is how we took something that was a product already that we had. It was a technology that we owned internally. And we found a new way to sell it by delivering APIs. And at the same time, we solved a lot of people's problems who wanted to use our technologies in their own software. I've only got 12 slides. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you just a little bit about who we are. I'm going to tell you what we did, and then I'm going to try to give you our lessons learned, the positive and the negatives, and hopefully you'll walk away with some real useful advice about how to take something that you already have and make an API product out of it. So first of all, I think there was a show of hands here that almost everyone here has heard of TomTom because we build those personal navigation devices, those great things you stick to your windshield and they tell you how to get to from point A to point B. But a show of hands, how many people here know that we actually sell digital map data? Oh, wow, that's a lot. That's good, okay? How many of you know that we have a sports watch? Okay, see, we got some new news. And how many of you know that the same technology that drives those P&Ds and the sports watches are available through our APIs? One person. Okay, great. So I've got a lot to talk about today. All right, so first of all, what did we, location, products, right? All right, what did we do? In one word, or 3 words, developer.tomtom.com. We went to market with a developer portal, a single website that any software developer, whether you're a JavaScript developer, an iOS developer, an Android developer, you can go here, you can get documentation, you can sign up, you can get sample code, you can try out our APIs, everything you need to get started using the exact same technology that powers the P&Ds, and you can put it in your own apps. And we did it in about 8 months' time. From the very beginning, the first thought, all the way through delivering it as a product. And when we did this, what we found was that we had a brand new channel to market. So this product that we had always sold in the form of a piece of hardware was now available via software. And most importantly, it's a world-class product. When you go to our website, we're really proud of it. It's easy to use, it's got the information you need, it's got forums, it's got contact us buttons, it's got everything that you need. So I want to give you a little teeny, just a taste of what our APIs can do, just to set the context. I'm not selling you on our APIs, but you've got to really understand what we're able to do. When we first went to market, we built something called the Map Toolkit API. First thing you need to do, come up with a name for your API. And we thought Map Toolkit was pretty easy to understand. And it consisted of the 4 most important features that you use whenever you're doing mapping. The first of all, map tiles. So you need to be able to specify a window in the world and get back raster images of maps pre-rendered at 19 different zoom levels. Geocoding, that's the process of typing in an address and getting a lat long, or the reverse. If you have a lat long, you want to know what address that is. Routing, this is the same routing that's found in our P&Ds. You specify an origin, a destination, whether you want to take historic traffic into consideration, whether you want to use current traffic, and whether or not you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, and it comes back and it gives you an actual path. And it does that in one of 2 ways, either a JSON format or just as a bitmap image that you can display on the screen, or both. And finally, traffic. And traffic is something that we're really proud of. We're constantly aggregating millions of bits of information around the world, and every 2 minutes, we're exposing the current traffic situation for anywhere in the world, so you know where the traffic jams are. This was our Map Toolkit API. We then added some more APIs as the months went by. The first was a geocoding API, which was an extension of what we could already do. It was more fine-tuned to people who needed to do lots of geocoding, millions of addresses. Okay? So we gave an API for that, and the no strings attached means that our license restrictions are much, much more attractive than our competition. For example, if you have 100 addresses and you geocode them, you can display them on any map that you want. You don't have to display them on a TomTom map. Our Places API allows you to get the POI searches within a window, and our Traffic Camera API, this was our first case of partnering with a third party, in this case TrafficLand, to be able to expose their public service and get things like live traffic feeds. That's a picture of London that was actually showing you live feed when I took that screenshot. So it's important to note, when we did this, that we always had the technology in-house. So first of all, TomTom maps have always powered our PNDs. You can't really build a PND without a map, and we've always had that expertise for being able to build the maps and to be able to display the maps, work with the maps, query the maps, all those kinds of things. We also used LBS functionality heavily in our map production. You can't build a map without geocoding millions of addresses to find what's changing from month to month. So this technology, this was our DNA. It's what we knew how to do. And we even had a showcase website, which is still there, called routes.tomtom.com, that you can go to. You can enter an origin, a destination, you can get the traffic, you can get the routes. And that was using web services, but they weren't publicly exposed web services. And what we wanted to do was to take that same technology and expose it to the rest of the world. Our customers were calling us up and asking us to do this. So we decided to do it. And we made a bunch of mistakes along the way. And the biggest mistake that we made was we didn't think about this as a product. What happened was a customer would call up and say, hey, can I use your geocoding? And we'd say, yeah, let us give you an API key. And we'd type an API key into a spreadsheet. And then we'd give it to a salesperson, and he'd give it to like 3 other people as well. And then we would create a contract with that person. And it would take a very long time. It was difficult to do. Okay? We weren't treating it like a real product. Okay? We also didn't really think about infrastructure for scaling. You know you're in trouble when the worst thing that could happen is you become very successful. And that was the situation that we were in. We were in a situation where if people came to us and started making millions and millions and millions of calls to our existing system, we would actually become not successful. And that's not a situation you want to be in. Next, the licensing and billing, we weren't doing that appropriately. And it's really complicated because when it comes to things like maps, you've got to deal with royalties. Okay? You've got to get license agreements in place. And the people who take in the money each month, they actually want to see you getting paid by the customers. It's a strange thing. So you have to take that into consideration as well. The API key management, I already talked about typing things into spreadsheets. It was just a mess, and our documentation was almost non-existent. But that's because we weren't thinking about this as a real product. It was just an internal technology that we had that we thought we would give to a few people. That didn't last long. We soon realized when the VP of sales said to me, Pete, I want you to think about this as a product, okay? A real product. And what happens when you start thinking about as a product? Well, the first thing you need to think about is how are you going to train your salespeople? Salespeople who are used to selling P&Ds and maybe data sales, you need to teach them what an API is because they, a collection of logically related RESTful web services. And they just kind of scratch their head and you say, no, easy questions that you ask the internet and it gives you answers. And they still kind of scratch their head. We spent a lot of time putting together a sales kit and the sales training, multiple sessions all around the world so people understood what our product was. Next, we had to do a real marketing analysis of what our competition was so that we could come up with the right price points, because if you don't do that, first thing people do when they look at your product is they always ask you, why should I use your product instead of the other person's product? And if you're not prepared to give them a good, valid answer, you're not ready to go to market. You also need a hand-free API key management system. So when you've got API keys, and we already have close to 3,000 developers signed up for our developer portal that are using our system, you need to keep track of these things. You need different classes of keys, okay? You need extended evaluation, you need evaluation keys, you need internal production keys, and you need to treat these things really seriously. And you need to stay clear of custom deals. You really want a clear pricing strategy so that when someone comes to you, you can say, this is our price, It's 0.001 cents per call. Do the math. I don't actually know what the real number is, but you just need a real actual number. Next page, some more things that you really need to do to turn it into a product. Listen and trust your engineers. Why? Not just because I'm an engineer, but because your engineers are the people who use web services. They're the ones who are programming these things on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones that will come to you and they'll say, I don't like XML. Let's standardize on JSON, right? Or they're going to say, what are you doing using matrix parameters? No one uses matrix parameters. You got to support query parameters only, and those kinds of things. And they're going to give it to you straight. They're going to tell you what works well. They're going to tell you what doesn't work well. And they're going to give you advices on how to change. And you really want to listen to them because in many ways, they are the experts. The next bullet point, making onboarding a painless process. If a software developer goes to your website and has to spend more than 2 minutes to sign up, something's wrong. Because they're going to go away. They're going to go somewhere else. So you really got to make that onboarding experience as fast and painless as possible and give it to them free. If not forever, for at least an extended period of time. For us, it's like 3 months or 1 million calls. Have fun with it, okay? Just go use it. If we feel like you're using too much, we'll give you a call. Focus on your differentiators and your core competencies. Okay? The inverse of this is don't do the things that aren't in your business's best interest. Stick with what your core competency is and get help from other places to be able to solve the problems that you're not experts in, like implementing a fully scalable system and hitting it hard. So TomTom has some amazingly wonderful data centers. But for our LBS platform, we went with an Amazon solution because we knew that it was really scalable. And we've proven it. We've got tests that will scale our systems to 25x. We'll take our hardest traffic day, and we'll just pound it. And we'll pound it on a test instance that we just spin up for a day, and then we spin it down. That kind of flexibility is really great. And you want to be able to do that. You want to hit it hard, because don't go to market until you've actually had one of your best engineering hacks try to bring your system down. We even have sort of a Netflix kind of philosophy of chaos monkeys, where we write software that go in and purposely monitor what would happen when things go down. The last, get an API management solution. There are probably some people around here who could offer you suggestions on one to go with. Okay, so we had some surprise lessons. And the surprise lessons are really best illustrated by this pie chart, not all of which is actually, no, I guess it's all being displayed. If you look at our effort for bringing our APIs to market as a product, you can see that between customer support and sales, it represented about 50% of our effort. We had to train every single salesperson. We had to get all that documentation in place. The engineers were typing away, getting stuff done and everything. But customer support, training them, getting that staff involved, don't underestimate how much work is involved. There's also evangelism. You need to be able to go out and publicize what you're doing. This is about technology here. So, some 40% of what we did was technical in nature. When it comes to surprises, one of the things that really surprised us was that we underestimated how hard it was to explain our product internally and externally. Because all of us understand APIs, but I think to the vast majority of the world, it's still kind of confusing. It's still kind of confusing what's the difference between an API and a program versus a web page. And so you need to spend a lot of time doing that. The other thing that surprised us was that our customers loved us not just for who we are, easy to work with, easy to call up, easy to communicate with, but who we weren't. A lot of people would call us up and say, I really can't stand working with those other people, and your license restrictions are so much better, we're going to go with you instead. Now, I like to think that it's also because we've got fantastic technology, but a lot of it also has to do not just with who you are, but who you aren't. And the last bullet point here, and I'm almost done with the presentation, is we actually, in many ways, overestimated how difficult it was to do this. So final thoughts. Every one of you works for a company that probably has some kind of asset, some kind of technology, some kind of core strength that you're using internally on a day-to-day basis, or maybe a data product or some other product that is just ripe for mining. Okay, you probably have something that would make a perfect API. And the idea here is to think about what you do on a day-to-day basis, think about your company's expertise, and how you can then offer that to the world as an API. Because with today's technology, it's easier than ever. If the infrastructure from a technology standpoint is difficult and you're worried about how you're going to scale things up, you can always call me. We can give you more details on what we did. If you don't have an API key management system in place yet, you'll definitely want to do that. But most importantly, it's not just a technology problem. Remember that pie chart and how we had to spend an awful lot of time doing those non-technical things of training your salespeople. So that, in a summary, is what we did, where we were, where we've been, and I'll leave it up to you if you have any questions.
Questions for Pete?
Have you got any tips on how to sell this to non-believers? So have you got any penny dropping anecdotes, I suppose?
Did you say
penny
panty?
drop? Penny?
Penny.
How did the penny drop?
Oh, okay, I think that's an expression I'm not familiar with.
Light bulb moments.
Light bulb moments. Demos. So we built a JavaScript SDK. So if you are a JavaScript programmer, and I'm not a JavaScript programmer, and you want to be able to impress someone, we did a webinar. And the webinar was, watch, I'm going to build a mapping application during the webinar. And we actually shared the screen, and we showed people how little bits of code, 1 page of code, can build a mapping interface with geocoding, with routing, of displaying your customers' points, all in 1 page of JavaScript code using our SDK. And when people see that, and then you link it to live traffic or something like that, they're sold. They realize, wow, this is a really powerful app, and it didn't take long to build. You're not talking months and months of software development anymore. You're talking just hours. So I recommend demos.
Just on that note, surely you would have come across the instance where people who curate some of those other functions and supply them as products or services were threatened by the ease of actually just assembling and making their kind of world look a little bit trivial.
It's true. And a lot of the way that you address that is through the evangelism. We've done things wrong in the past, and every department owns sort of technology that they feel very comfortable with, and they sort of feel like it's their responsibility to expose it if it's going to be exposed at all. I would say in those cases what you really want to do is to explain to them that you're not taking over their technology. All you're doing is offering a way to interface with their technology so that everyone else can make use of it. And, you know, before we had an API management solution, it was not uncommon for one product unit to call us up and say, can you give us the address of your load balancer because we want to hit your services? And we had to convince them that the better architectural view is a pyramid, where at the bottom you have all your technology. And at the very top you have one entrance, and that one entrance in our case is Mashery, and that all requests go through the system only through the top. And I think most engineers and most people will understand how powerful that is when you implement that.
Time for one more question. Last question between this and lunch. So, actually, since you both raised your hand at the same time, I'll let you both go.
How do you go about training a non-technical sales team to sell your API?
Well, the first way we did it was the wrong way. We gave them a bunch of definitions, and we said, okay, the first thing we need to do is to define what an API is. It's a logical collection of web services, and they just shook their head. And then we said an SDK is a library written in a specific programming language that encapsulates that. Don't do any of that. Start with the end product. Show them a demo of what you can do with it, and then work backwards show them the actual source code that was done and say, what we're selling here is a technical product to technical people, and this is what they're going to need to write. And then work your way back, finally, to the fact that you're selling APIs. But my advice is definitely don't start at the beginning, because if you start at the beginning, they're going to lose you very, very quickly. Now, probably every single one in here, every person in here understands what I'm talking about. But if you're talking to a salesperson, it's a lot easier to say, here's a demo I built in an afternoon. And they go, ah, okay. So that's my advice.
Hi, you mentioned fixed prices and sticking to them. How did you deal with the classic fixed price API problem of having fascinating but penniless startups who want to send you a ton of calls and multi-billion-dollar conglomerates who also want to send you a ton of calls, and there's massive disparity in their ability to pay, but you want to work with both of them and stick to your fixed price?
That's a really good question. Every time, if you're probably creating an API system, you're really hoping for that golden customer who's going to come in and give you the $10 million contract. But what you're really going to get is this individual developer only wants to do $1,000 of business in a year. So what we really do is, by offering both free and extended evaluations for several months and millions of calls, and then being very flexible. So if someone calls us up and says, you know, hey, we're still trying this out, we haven't got enough traffic yet to pay for it, we're going to be very flexible with them. So I'm not going to say we're giving away our services to those little guys, but we are extending their periods of evaluation so that they can get started up. But when it comes right down to it, having a hands-free billing system where if someone just uses $20 worth of your services and they can actually pay for that, that really helps to keep those small customers alive and to encourage them to grow. So make sure you just have an automatic billing system that doesn't require a lot of work for a $20 bill.
Thank you. Great presentation, Pete.
Thank you, Julie.